Welcome to the Coach's Corner, part of the Iron Sharpening Iron Universe. I'm your host, Davina Lyons, also known as Mama Lyons, and this is where real conversations meet real growth. Here we explore what it means to rise through reflection, resilience, and purpose. One story, one insight, one breakthrough at a time. Whether you're a coach, a leader, or simply on your own personal development journey, this is your space to reflect, identify, stand, and emerge stronger than before. So grab your notebook, take a deep breath, and let's rise together right here in the Coach's Corner. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another powerful episode of the Coach's Corner, part of the Iron Sharpening Iron Universe. I'm your host, Davina Lyons, also known as Mama Lyons, and today we're talking about leadership, culture, and the kind of transformation that changes entire school communities. Our guest embodies all of that. We're joined by Lisa Norwood Williams, founder and CEO of iLead Education Services, and a 25-year veteran educator who has turned around not one, not two, but three schools. She's raised student achievement, rebuilt school cultures, and reduced discipline referrals by over 50%. Lisa has served as a teacher, interventionist, staff development coach, and principal. She now uses her experience to coach new and aspiring school leaders to lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. She is an expert in PBIS, MTSS, Kagan engagement, data-driven leadership, and building systems that actually last. But what makes her story even more powerful is her resilience. In 2013, during the height of her career, Lisa lost her hearing, yet she continued to lead, advocate for herself, and find new ways to support the people she serves. Her journey is a true example of what it means to rise through adversity. Today, we're diving into her leadership, philosophy, her personal journey, and the work she's doing now through iLead Education Services to grow strong leaders who change lives. So we're going to have to welcome Lisa. Of course, I'm having technical difficulties at the last moment, but it's going to be okay. Here we are. Hey, Lisa.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm fighting with my technology, but I'm doing well.
Okay.
If there's one thing I've learned is that you just got to keep rolling with it.
And just go with it.
Right?
Yes.
I'm so excited that you're here. And I have to say I'm really excited because you're an educator. That's my first love. I've been touting that on social media all week, saying I'm interviewing an educator, and I'm very interested in everything that you have to share. So let's just get it going, right?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So first thing, what sparked your passion for school leadership?
So I got into education in a very untraditional way. My background is in business management. So leadership has always been like in my mind. I just kind of transitioned into it after being a teacher for a little while. And it just seemed like this is what I need to be doing. If I'm not going to manage restaurants or hotels or nonprofits, then let's just take it with education and see where we land. And here I am 25 years later.
Nice. 25 years. That's a long time. Yeah. I'm excited to hear about all of the different experiences you've had in education, because, as you know, I'm a teacher. I'm a middle school teacher. I teach 8th grade English language arts.
Okay.
And I have just been in the classroom. I have admired many people in administration and said, I wouldn't do your job. Just to be honest with you. There's a limit for me. And I think it's my love of the students that just wants to keep me in that space. Outside of that, of course, I do all types of entrepreneurial vision or ventures, and I love, helping people, young people and adults, right? But there's a special place for administrators. There's a special place, and I can't wait to hear, how you help them. So, let's start with what people feel is, or what do people misunderstand about being a leader in education? I'm interested in that.
Okay. I think the biggest misunderstanding is that you sit in the office all day and you just tell people what to do. And it is so far from that. Yes. You hold people accountable, but it's not so much telling them what to do, right? There are systems that need to be put in place, but it's a collective effort. It's collaboration. But most people think as the principal, you just sit in your office, you yell at kids, suspend kids, and that's all you do. And then that's it. And that's not it. And I used to invite teachers into my seat, like, come and shadow me for the day. I invite kids to come in and sit in the principal's chair and see what I do all day. And then after they do that, especially the kids, they're like, Miss Norwood, this is not what I thought principals do. And I said, no, it's absolutely not. And they're like, we're not even in your office. I said, because that's not what principals do. They don't spend all of their time in the office, or I should say they should not be spending all of their time in the office.
Right.
So it's very different once you get into that seat. And as I like to say, you get the keys to the building. It's a whole nother world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I know my principal and assistant principal, they rove around with the cart, and I'm like, is that like a new thing now that's what they do? They're pushing a cart around the building. They've got their computer, they have everything, and really actively engaged in what's happening in and out of classrooms.
Yes.
That I don't remember that when I was younger. I don't remember even seeing the principal. And I think that's where it comes from, us thinking you're in the office, because when I was in school eons ago, you were sent to the principal's office, and apparently the principal was always there waiting for you, right? Not anymore. With a paddle. That's right.
Not anymore. Education has evolved so much from when we were in school, and even from when I first started, teaching way back when. It's just a different landscape, and the responsibilities have grown so much so that as a school leader, you can't afford to just be sitting in your office, right? There are lots of things going on. There are relationships that need to be built. People are wired differently, and we now have to pay attention to who the people are on your campus. Back in the day, you taught, you were in your classroom, you shut the door, and you were good. Nobody came to bother you, like none of those things. Now we encourage more collaboration. We want teachers to work together. We want principals, assistant principals to be hands-on and walking around the campus. And quite frankly, when the more visible you are as a leader, you have less challenges. And that's just what it is. Like, if kids see you in the hallway, they're more than likely going to go back to class. Right. And they're going to tell their friends, oh, Miss Norwood's outside. Don't go outside. She's going to get you. She's going to make you go back in class. So people are, it's a different thing now than what it used to be. But it's still, I enjoyed being a principal. It was one of those things I used to tell people, like, I would do this and not get paid for it. Like, that's how much I enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed interacting with the students. I enjoyed teaching or learning alongside my teachers. And even those times when you have parents that are disgruntled, it's all about relationship building. Have you built a relationship with that parent? If not, how do you build that relationship with the parent? And you invite them into the space, because it really is their space. They're bringing their kids for 6-7 hours a day. They need to know what's going on, but it's just inviting them in and making them feel welcome, like it is their space.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, you mentioned relationships a couple times. Relationships are essential, right? Not just with the students, but with the staff, as a leader. But you didn't start as a principal. Talk to me about teacher, interventionist, coach, then principal. What was that journey like?
So we were living here in Phoenix. My ex-husband and I, we moved back to California, and we were living in Bakersfield. That's where my grandmother was. And there was nothing in Bakersfield at the time except for oil fields, restaurants, and education. I had already managed restaurants. I didn't know a thing about oil fields. I left that to my ex-husband. And my minister at the time, he was like, well, you should be an educator. And I was like, no, I have children of my own, so I'm good. And lo and behold, I subbed in a class for a couple of weeks. And by the end of that 2-week period, the principal was like, would you like to teach 3rd grade? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, this is not what I went to school for. This is not what I signed up for. These are other people's children. Like, it was so far from what I had ever imagined. But, after a lot of conversations with my minister, with friends, next thing I knew, I had a class of 20 students. And they did not all belong to me. They belonged to other people, and they left me in there with them. And I was like, okay, I guess we are going to do this. And that was the beginning. And once I got in there, I absolutely loved it. Never imagined in a million years that I would be an educator. I was that person on the college campus. I would see education majors walking around with these posters and things that they were creating. And I'm laughing like, what in the world are they doing? And here I was just a few short years later, and I was in that same space as an educator. And it grew on me. And I even tried to leave. After 5 years, I left, and I was like, I'm good. I'm going back to corporate America. I did some nonprofit work, and literally the nonprofit work was like a segue right back into education. And you mentioned that you teach 8th grade ELA. I taught 7th grade ELA. And crazy enough, my 7th graders were my last class of 2nd graders. So I knew all of those kids, and I'm like, how is it that I have y'all again? And just with a lot more hormones right now.
Right.
And so stayed in that space and just kind of moved up, moved back to Phoenix, taught 6th grade. They didn't have a middle school at the time. And so 6th grade was my home, and loved 6th grade. My youngest son at the time was in 6th grade. He thought I was going to put him in my class. And I'm like, no, we're going to send you to a whole nother school. And I enjoyed the journey along the way. And I remember my principal at the time, she said, Lisa, what are your aspirations in education? And I was like, well, eventually I want to be a principal. And she was like, oh, okay, that's good. Next thing I knew, I had become.
Oh my God. Something happened. There you go again.
Okay.
You're okay.
I became a teacher on assignment, and I was like, well, no, I have a 10-year plan. I want to be in the classroom for 10 years. I want to make sure I learn everything, and I want to have impact on my students. And she said, you'll have a greater impact coming out of the classroom. And I was fighting that tooth and nail. And next thing I knew, the next year, she had created a position for me as a learning intervention specialist. And I'm like, what is this? And she said, you're going to work with behavior, you're going to work with reading, and we're just going to blend it. So it's not just behavior interventionist, it's not just a reading interventionist, you're a learning interventionist, because you're combining both. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she just created a whole new position, went through all these trainings, and just continued on that same journey. I thought I wasn't ready, but she saw something in me that said, yes, you are ready. And here you go. Here's your first step into leadership.
Wow. That kind of support is invaluable. See, because look at what you're doing now, right? You're
Yes,
helping others. So
it
it's
is.
always great to have those leaders. Yeah. So sorry about that glitch. LinkedIn is supposed to be streaming live now on LinkedIn, and it gave up on me. So now I owe an apology to all of my LinkedIn people who were watching. So I will probably end up putting it back up on LinkedIn as a recording. So just so everyone knows who's listening what just happened. But anyway, this is really interesting. So how you went from one step to the next and then ended up principal. Um, how did you being a principal, how did you go from being a principal to where you are today?
So I was a principal for 10 years. I worked 3 different campuses. Each campus was, let's just say, they had their own struggles, right? But similar struggles in the 3 different districts. And then that final year, it was right after COVID, and the landscape it wasn't the same anymore. It was just different, and I knew there was something else. I just didn't know what that something else was. And I'm a spiritual person. I believe that God works in my life not by accident. And I like to tell people God literally removed me from that space, because I was not planning to leave, but it just so happened that I left, and I was like, okay, now what, God? What are we doing? I'm not here in a school. And it was like, you know what? The jobs that I wanted and interviewed for, I didn't get. And I was like, well, why not create my own? And I remember a mentor several years ago asking, if you could have your dream job after being a principal, what would it be? And I said, I want to be a principal coach. Like, when I grow up, I want to coach principals. And so when I was transitioning out, I was like, if they won't hire me to be a principal coach, I'll just become a principal coach on my own. And did the research, did all the things to start my business. And here I am now as a principal coach and a leadership coach. And even while I was a principal, I was working at ASU in their ed leadership department, and I was a leadership coach. So I was working with aspiring principals, and I did that for like 4 years. So I already had my feet wet a little bit in that area. And so once I stepped away from my school, it was like, you know what, let's just do this full time. Let's help other leaders, new leaders, and was given the opportunity that it wasn't even, may have been 3 or 4 months after I left the school, an opportunity came for me to start coaching new principals. And so that's what I do now.
Very nice. Yeah. So what are some of the main areas in which you coach with principals? What's like the number one thing that they present with?
Usually it's systems, right? Because as a new leader, you're not even sure what your systems are. You don't think of the things that you do day to day as systemic, right? You're just doing them. You have to talk about classroom management. Well, that's a school-wide behavior system, right? You have instruction, and you have to work with your teachers on instructional practices. That's an instructional system. So what are all the things what are those systems that you have on your campus, and how do we prioritize them? So then we start looking at data, and based on the principal and the school, we look at that data and we create a plan from there. And that's how we start our work together. And then we build in some other things like culture, right? Because that's an organizational system. So what is the culture of your school? What's the climate of your school? And making sure that they understand that. And how do you build those relationships to make sure that your culture is what it should be, and not just for students, but also for staff, for the community. So we kind of start there, looking at the data and seeing where they are. And sometimes as new principals, they don't really know where they need to start. And so that's kind of what I do with coming in and helping them. So let's start here. What's the most pressing? Which data is like screaming at you right now, and you have to address it, and you can't keep going and ignore it. And usually that's where we start.
Who seeks you out? Is it the district or is it principals themselves?
So I work alongside ADE. So principals are signing up to get support. And so then they want the support. And so then I'm assigned so many principals that I start working with. That's through that one particular contract. On my own, I usually seek out and I look for schools that have new principals and offer my services. The challenge with that is most new principals, if they're in year one, like they're excited and they just want to be left alone because they want to just do what they've been dreaming to do, right? And so it's usually the principals at year 2, year 3, when they start thinking, okay, you know what? This is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. Let me see where I can find some support. And
that makes sense. That makes sense. It sounds like teachers are like that too.
Yes.
They come in very rose-colored lenses, very, oh my goodness, I'm going to do this, this, and that. And the truth of the matter is the reality sets in, real lifing happens. And
yes.
You are dealing with human beings that are a variable that is not something you can, predict all the time.
Yes.
So I can definitely see that. So very, very cool. You mentioned working with ADE. Is it like the Project Momentum? Is it for turnaround schools? And I know you have a history of turning around schools. Tell us about that.
Yes. So first question. So it's not through Project Momentum.
Okay.
It is through their it's one of the standards. I forget which one it is, but it's called Principal Leadership Academy.
Okay.
So I work with them. So yeah, there's that. And then the turnaround piece is, yes, I've been on 3 different campuses. Each campus was a turnaround situation. The first campus, it was a full-fledged turnaround, meaning when I arrived, I had information. It was like, okay, what do you do with this information? How are we going to fix this? And it was a learning experience because I was a brand new principal, right? So I didn't even know. Thankfully, the program that I was in at ASU, it provided us with, we were trained as turnaround principals, if you will. So we were trained to walk into a building, assess what's happening, and start putting things in place. So you start looking at those systems, right? And this system it's either working or not working. Then you go to the next one. It's either working or not working. And so one of the things that I learned early on, the best way to learn about what's happening at a school outside of the data is to talk to the people. So I met with each and every staff member because I wanted to get their perspective of what was happening on the campus. Thankfully, that first school, I had an amazing team. My instructional coaches were great. My assistant principal was great. And I couldn't have asked for a better team. And we worked together so well. Literally, people called us the dream team, because we were literally, before Boots on the Ground was a song, we were literally boots on the ground. We were working hand in hand to make things happen on that particular campus, from behavior to instruction to community, bringing the parents back. It was truly transformational. And we worked really hard. Those first 3 years, like we were nonstop. We did all of our own professional development. So when I get pushback now from principals that don't want outside people coming in, like I know what that's like, because as a new principal, the first 3 years, we didn't bring anybody in. All the professional development we did ourselves as a team. We started with data because we wanted our teachers to understand data is not just something that they give you on a piece of paper. Data is what's happening in your classroom. How do you change those numbers? So just making sure that teachers understood what good instruction was. We did a lot of book studies, and they were like live book studies. Like we're in here, we're reading it, we're talking about it, but then we want to see it in action. So we were in classrooms. We did the work. Year 3, year 4, we really start to see it turn around. And actually, let me go back. Year 1, we saw change because after the first year, we were recognized by the district and by the state for turning the school around and achieving a higher than average growth rate in 1 year. So we were doing the work from the beginning, but systemically, we saw it happening over the course of the 3 years. And research says that it takes 3 to 5 years to turn a school around completely. Mm-hmm. And we knew we had done it when in year 4, I want to say, the students had voice. The students would come to us and say, can we do this? Or what about this? Or have you considered this? So we knew then we were on the right track because the students had become a part of that system to make it a better place. Mm. And when I moved to the other districts, I just replicated the same thing. Whatever we did on the first campus, it worked. And I took it with me to the second campus. And some of those same people came with me to the second campus. And then when I went to the third campus, it was right during the heart of COVID. I don't ever recommend switching districts in the middle of a pandemic. Mm-mm. But the same thing, we replicated the same things, and some of those same people that started with me at that first school, they went with me to the second and then into the third, and it made it a lot easier because they knew what was happening. And so for me, I was building capacity with those teachers because by the time they came with me to the third school, they were now in leadership positions because they had helped me turn around 2 other schools until they knew what it looked like. So now we're just going to do the same thing again in school number 3. So as a leader, I was building capacity all the way around, but changing the lives of students and families and teachers along the way.
Yeah, that is good. As you're talking, I'm just thinking about, obviously, because I'm in the trenches as a teacher, and we are also, turning around, so to speak. I made a joke when I first started about my school that I felt like we're doing you're making a U-turn in the Titanic. That's yes. My joke. And what I love is that we're actually doing it as well. And I know that it takes a lot of hard work and dedication from the administration, from the teachers and everyone. What are your thoughts on parents, though, and parent involvement, and how, if at all, do you work with iLead? Do you touch on the notion of working with parents?
So parent engagement is huge. Like mm-hmm. Parents don't realize how much power they actually have, right? And so as a school leader, that was always my goal, was to help them see, like, you can make a difference on this campus. It doesn't matter your background, where you've come from. None of that matters. What matters is that you have students in this school. And mm-hmm. so you have a say. And sometimes teachers were not happy with me because during my parent meetings, and I met with them every month, I would give them information to go back and ask the teachers about. And I would say, if your teachers can't tell you X, Y, and Z, you come and talk to me. Because at the same time, we were training teachers to be able to do the work with the students, but also be prepared to talk to the parents. So there was a communication gap all the way around. And so when you help parents see that how valuable they are, and you help teachers see that parents are not a threat, they really are going to help you with this student, it works, right? And
Mhm.
so we had the parent meetings, we gave them a voice. I would take them on tours of the classrooms during the day. Again, teachers were not happy, but I'm like, their children are here for the majority of the day. They need to know what their learning environment looks like. So we would take parents on tours. We wanted them to be an integral part of our school, but we
Mm.
had to invite them in because a lot of them felt like, no, we can't go there, we can't talk to people, we don't have a voice. You do have a voice. And so I haven't tapped into that yet in my business. Definitely something that needs to happen. I do have a colleague, like parent engagement, like that's her thing, so we talk about that. But
Okay.
there's definitely that cross of where you help principals see how valuable the parents really are and what can they bring and offer to that space. And if we're being honest, like when schools are going through their school improvement plan, their comprehensive needs assessment, there's a whole parent component of that.
Right.
It goes beyond the survey that is sent out. Like, are you really engaging your parents, and what does that look like? So yes, give them the yearly survey, but what else are you doing to bring them into the space and allow them to be a part of the school community?
Very important. Very, very important. I love talking to parents. I always have, but I know some of my colleagues shy away from it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times it has to do with you can get one or two parents that are challenging in terms of their tone or the way they talk to you. And then it's like a fear wall goes up. And
Yes.
I personally agree with you. The more you involve the parents, the more you, and it helps you actually relate better to the students because you
Yes.
have a different level of insight. And I think kids love to know that they love it, but they don't really love it, but they kind of
Yes.
love it. That
Yes.
teachers and parents are communicating. You know, I
Yep.
teach in a small town, so I run into kids and parents all the time in the grocery store and everywhere. And I have parents will say, you know, oh, you're the favorite teacher. And it's so funny because that tells me they're going home and talking to
Right.
their parent. They're always talking to their parents about their teachers.
Right.
So anyway, very, very cool. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now and just talk about what I know has been a personal challenge and a demonstration of your resilience. Talk to us about losing your hearing. Was it in 2013?
2013.
Yeah. What happened?
Honestly, I don't know. So I was finishing up my master's program, and I remember going to the campus, and this was before I was a principal. I was in a quasi AP role, and I would be on campus on Saturdays working, getting caught up with school stuff, but then also getting caught up with my personal studies at ASU. And I had one teacher, he would come in all the time, and we would talk all the time. And then there was one Saturday, like, I literally could not hear anything that he was saying. So literally out of nowhere, and he would say something and I didn't respond in the way that I should have. And he's looking at me and I'm looking at him like, what? And he was like, you didn't hear what I said. And I said, okay, so repeat it. And didn't even think that much of it. And because it kept happening, and then I got into my last class, I'll never forget, it was a finance class, and I could not hear what the professor was saying. And I was like, okay, there is something wrong. So I go to the doctor, they do all these tests. I was flushing my nose, like maybe it was sinuses. It was none of that. Finally went to an audiologist and they were like, you have severe hearing loss. And I'm like, never even heard of anyone in my family having severe hearing loss. So kept going back, went through a series of tests. I get to my first job as a principal and I could not hear what was being said. And so I finally, I not knowing at the time, I ordered hearing aids off of the internet, not thinking like hearing aids are like glasses. You have a specific prescription. And so going to buy readers from
Right.
Walgreens is not going to help me see, just like buying hearing aids from the internet is not going to help me hear. And so eventually I did go and get the right type of hearing aids, and it was life changing because I could now hear things that I should have been hearing. And the way that I look at it was, so in full transparency, I was the person in school that the teacher said talked a lot and was really bossy. And my grandmother would always tell me, Lisa, you don't have to have the last word. She even told me that after I got married, because I felt like I needed to have the last word. And so it was a blessing in disguise, because as a principal, I learned I didn't really need to hear everything that people were saying, either about me or the school or whatever. So God kind of protected me from hearing all of those things. However, I would tell people, up front, like, I don't hear very well. And so if you want to talk to me, you have to face me, right? You can't call my name from the back and I'm walking in front of you, because I'm probably not going to hear you. And so I had a couple teachers that were offended because they said, well, Lisa just walks around here and she don't hear nobody. She act like she don't hear nobody, and we're talking to her. And so one of my coaches finally said, well, as long as you're talking to her from behind, she doesn't hear you. You have to talk to her facing her if you want her to hear you and understand what you're saying. And that was a lot for some of the teachers. It was a lot for them. It was a lot for me, because it wasn't our normal, right? If somebody's talking to you, you're just supposed to hear what they say. So I had to learn how to advocate for myself. I had to learn and let people know that I had a hearing impairment, and I didn't want people to know at first. I would try to cover it up with my hair. I just wanted to be normal, but it got to a point where it just wasn't normal. And I had to accept that I could not hear like everyone else. And each year my hearing got progressively worse. And so that even became a challenge, because I'm at the highest volume on my phone, on my app, and I still was not able to hear. So some days I just felt like I just needed to withdraw and just not even be a part of what was happening, because I couldn't hear fully all the things that were going on.
Wow. Yeah. So you had to, along the way, come up with tools. You had to learn to read lips, I imagine.
Yes.
More and just kind of sharpen. But that didn't stop you from your mission of doing what you're doing in education, right?
It did not. If anything, it kind of fueled me, because typically when we see people that are differently abled, right, we think, they're not going to be able to do the job. Well, for me, it was like, okay, so now I need to prove to you that I can do this job just as well as someone who can hear. And for me, it was normal to have that thought process, because growing up, I didn't grow up with my parents, and my mom was an alcoholic, right, and had been to prison. So my goal in life was to be better than my parents, right? And so if you give me a challenge, I'm going to push through it. No matter how hard it is, I'm going to push through and make it happen. And so I just took not having my hearing as just another challenge. Like, if I can survive, not having my parents and not wanting to be like them, I can survive this. And it took a lot from me, but I was determined to make it happen. And my principal colleagues would tease me, because we would be in our principal meetings and I would have my bracelets on. And so I can't hear that noise. And so I'm writing on the table.
Making the noise.
My bracelets are making all that noise. And they would look over at me or send me a text. And I'm like, what is wrong? They're like, your bracelets. And I'm like, oh, my bad. So, I learned to, I had to learn to adjust in those meetings. And then also with not being able to hear like in real time, I had delayed responses with what
Mhm.
so I could hear people, but it was somewhat of a delay in the hearing. And so they may have said something and moved on from it. And I'm still processing what's being said. So here goes my hand. I'm raising my hand to comment on what I heard and could now understand. So
Right.
even that type of adjustment, and my friends were like, okay, Lisa, so you don't need to respond to everything. And I'm like, I don't, but I do. So like, I'm not going to silence my voice because it takes me a little bit longer to
Right.
process. But you just learn those little nuances that comes with it, and you keep moving forward. You keep moving forward. And then I had students that had the same disability. So I
Uh-huh.
had to teach them to advocate for themselves, and would have to talk to certain teachers like, you have to use the amplified mic in your classroom. That's not an option, because
Mhm.
it keeps your student's brain from working twice as hard to hear and process what you're saying. And that was difficult, for some teachers, but it's like you cannot not provide this accommodation for a student. That one is against the law.
Mhm.
And two, you're causing the child to have to suffer through things that they shouldn't have to suffer through, all because you don't want to use the device. So making sure that I advocated for students and then taught the students how to advocate for themselves. Like, if you're in the classroom and you can't hear, let the teacher know that you can't hear, or that you need it repeated, or that you need to sit closer. Just little things like that you don't think makes a difference, but it really does.
Yeah, I was just thinking, in my 12 years of teaching, I don't know of having a student in my class that had issues. Of course, there's always issues with vision, but challenged by loss of hearing, I don't have a memory of that. But I have a lot of teachers, especially our teachers who are tend to have a softer voice. They use the amplified mic, and
Yes.
I always said my mouth is too big to have one of those. I probably would just blow them out the water because I'm naturally loud.
Right.
But honestly, you just taught me something. You just taught me the use for that is essential.
It
So
is.
very
And
good.
it does have to do with pitch. So like me, for instance, people with deep voices,
Mm-hmm.
I can hear them clearly,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if
Yes.
someone has a really soft pitch in their voice, I tell people all the time, like, why is she talking? Because I can't even hear what she's saying.
Wow.
Like, it does not do me any good. And even now with technology the way it is, when I'm on a virtual call, I make sure I have the captions, because I want to make sure that I hear clearly everything that's being said. And the captions aren't 100%, but it's better than not having them and being
Right.
forced to try to understand what somebody's trying to say. And the worst is actually being on a virtual call with someone with a soft pitch and they're not speaking loudly. And I'm like, okay, captions, I need y'all to work overtime today, because I can't hear what's being said.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you are an example for young people in that. I love that you are helping them, teaching them to advocate for themselves. And I think that's a great example across the board in any challenge, is that
Right.
find a way, don't give up, but find a way. And so, yeah, that definitely makes you very, very resilient. What is your greatest leadership accomplishment?
Ooh, I would have to say seeing people that were once teachers or people who used to work with me and for me, seeing them rise up to those next levels. So I've had my former assistant principal, I brag about him all the time. A couple years ago, he was chosen as principal of the year from Maricopa County Superintendent's office. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I gave birth, right?
That's nice.
Because he started with me and he didn't even want to be a principal. He wanted to go back to school to be a doctor, a medical doctor. And I told him, I said, well, God has a different plan for you. And now you're just going to be in this principal leadership program. And so I literally enrolled him into the program. So to see him go from not even wanting to go into full-fledged school leadership, because he was an AP, so he was already doing great things,
Right.
but pushing him into that principal seat and then watching him grow to them being chosen as principal of the year, like I felt really proud, because I feel like if it wasn't for me, he wouldn't even be in that space, right? Yeah. And then other people that have worked for me, I have another colleague, she's now a director of an alternative school program. Okay. And so watching her flourish, and I have another one who she started out as a coach and now she's an assistant principal. So, and seeing teachers go from teachers to teacher leaders and or coaches or assistant principals. So for me as a leader, I would say that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of. Those people that I know that I have impacted their lives in a way, and now I see them impacting other people's lives.
That's powerful. So lifting someone else up rises you up just as well. It does. That is really, really true. That is so awesome. Earlier you mentioned data, and I want to go back to that because as a teacher, I know how much data makes teachers fret, because they want to teach, they want to see kids learn, but translating, what they're doing and the results of it, the assessments, to actually being able to use, and that's one of my goals, is to really be good at taking that data and informing my practice. And I'm an MBCT candidate this year, waiting for my results.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I am so nervous about that because it's tough, but I learn a lot from that process, and I'm learning, even listening to you. What's the biggest piece of advice that you give to teachers to help them be able to use data effectively? And I'm selfishly asking you for myself too.
No worries. So first, understanding that data doesn't lie.
Okay.
Like the data is the data, the numbers are the numbers, the percentages are the percentages. So understanding that, first of all, and then also understanding that you have the power to change the data. Okay. You as a teacher, a leader, you have the power to change those numbers. If those numbers don't agree with you and you don't like what you see, you have the power to change that, but you can't be afraid of it, right? You cannot be afraid of it. You can't just say, oh, well, I'll let them worry about it. No, data is everybody's problem. Everybody has to take ownership of the data. And so when I say that, I mean, as a leader, data wasn't just for my team, my admin team. Data was for our teachers. Data was for our students. Data was for our parents. I did not shy away from sharing the data with our parents, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But when I shared it, I also had a plan of how we were going to make those numbers look better. And when we did achieve certain levels, how did we do that? We looked at our data, we dissected it literally down to the student. And you have to remember that those numbers, those are humans. Those are little people in your classroom. So if your data says that 65% are reading proficiently, that means 65% of your class. And like I would tell teachers, like get a pie, a pizza pie or whatever, and take out 65%. Those are the people that are, and the others are the ones that are not. And then now let's put some faces to the 65%. So you have to make the data come alive so that you can understand the magnitude of how important it is for making the data work. Like, how do we move these numbers? We can't just say, oh, well, only, 15% of them are doing this or that. Okay, but that 15%, it matters. So one of the things, this was early on in my principal journey, we would have to turn in our goals to the district, right?
Mhm.
And so my goals were always more than 10%. And so one of the ladies I remember at the district, she's like, well, Lisa, that's not a realistic number to go above 10% increase. And I said, well, are you going to tell my parents that I only believe 10% of my school is going to grow? I said, that means out of 500 kids, you're telling me that only 10%, 50 of them, I'm only expecting 50 kids to grow academically. I said, are you going to my parent meeting and tell them that? And she was like, well, no. And I said, well, I'm not either. So the goal is higher than 10%. It always has to be. The goal is always 100%. Now, how we get there and how much we make towards that 100%, that shows you our efforts, right? But the goal is 100% of the kids to be proficient in all subject areas. I'm never going to tell a parent that our goal is only 10% or only 20%, because then I'm saying I don't believe in my teachers. I don't believe in our systems. I don't believe that our students are capable. And is that the message that you're trying to send to families? Absolutely not. And so if I want my teachers to understand that, I need it to be personal for them. And so we always had the data. Yes, the numbers are the numbers, but here's what it looks like in terms of real kids in your class. And so we would have them set goals. So if you have 25 kids in your class, every quarter, your job is to move 5 of those students up. And not just move the next 5, but maintain the first 5. And so if you keep moving 5 and maintaining 5, by the end of the year, you've moved more than half your class. But you have to break it down so small for teachers to understand, and you have to make it human for them, right? These are students in your class. These are not just numbers.
Wow, that is powerful. You know what? You just taught me a lot, and that I can personally apply. I'm not kidding you, because I understand what you mean by make it, really tie it to the kids, the individuals, and look at it that way, not separating the data from the student. And so I can go back now, just in thinking of that, I can go back and take a different approach. Love that. That is so good. It's like, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. And it really isn't. I think people look at their numbers and get intimidated by how low they may be. But at the same time, the other point you bring up that's really good is, not only are you maintaining what you've helped to grow, you're bringing more along. It's a gradual process.
Exactly.
So that's powerful. And I think that, again, as a teacher, I don't know that parents realize all of those different aspects of what we're responsible for. Just like you say, people think principals just sit in the office. I often think that parents may feel like it's not hard. You're standing up in front of the room and you're teaching. Well, it's so much more to it, because we have so many different minds in the room that we have to teach to, and learning styles.
Yes.
And you're right. The data is the most important piece, because that's what actually illustrates the individuals to us as teachers.
Absolutely.
And I think another challenge, though, is time. Time is a challenge. It's challenging for teachers to find the time to write the lessons, deliver the lessons, and then turn around and now analyze the outcomes from the assessments and all of that. What do you say for your principals? Because I know the principal's philosophy is what bleeds out to the campus. What do you say about that, about time?
You're never going to have enough time. That's number one, right? And you're not going to miraculously get some additional hours. That accepting the reality is number one. Number two, as a leader, as a school leader, it's my job to create the time. If I want you to analyze data, I have to give you the opportunity to analyze the data. I can't expect you to go home and do it. I need to provide the time for you to do it, whether it's in your PLC meetings or your grade level meetings, and you dedicate a day just to that, Or if it's one of your professional learning sessions where that's all we're doing is looking at the data, and everybody has their data that they need to understand. We would always start with the school-wide data, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is where we are as a school. This is how it breaks down to each grade level. This is how it breaks down to each teacher. And so we would take them through those steps. And so on our teams, my leadership team, they always had a certain section of teachers that they were responsible for. Mm-hmm. So now it's your job as a coach or AP, it's your job to go work with those teachers and make sure that they understand their data as a group, as a grade level, but also as an individual teacher. So you're giving them the time, but you're also giving them the support. Okay. I can't ask you to do something and not provide the time or the support for you to do it. And so as leaders, you have to remember that as well. Like, what are you doing? If you're not taking something off their plate, how are you supporting them? Or how are you doing both? And so it's important to look at your calendar, your PD calendar, and your PLC calendar, and where are you going to provide time to analyze data. What I've seen now, a lot of schools do, which wasn't always a practice, or districts, they have that first day after break be like a PD day instead of all the kids back and everything. But what I wonder on those campuses, are you giving them just more information, or are you allowing them to use the information that they previously received and to put it to practice? Right? Are you showing them how?
Yes.
I know how it works. I know exactly how it works. You know.
Yeah, you talk about complaining. Oh my goodness, people complain. My district at one point, not my current district, a prior one, complained about having that day, but then that day was filled with additional PDs, and now we can't get our classroom ready. We've been on a break. We want to get our classroom ready, and you have a lot of that. You know, obviously a lot of grumbling, and there's no perfect scenario, and there's different perspectives. I know that as a leader, as a campus leader, you're responsible ultimately for the vision and, you know, making sure that things are executed. Often teachers don't get it, don't know what that principal is faced with. I sometimes watch my principal and am amazed at all that she is able to accomplish. And do it with a smile. I mean, I'm really amazed. I'm telling you, because especially with parents coming in sometimes and being not so nice, and it's a tough job. It's a tough job. What in closing, what would be your parting words of encouragement or any advice to campus leaders? You know,
don't give up is the first thing. Like, you chose this path for a reason. Don't give up. Your intentions are good, but also seek out help. Like, if you need a coach, if you need support from your district, like, don't be afraid to ask for additional support, because the support is out there, whether it's a coach within your district. Some districts provide principal coaches, or you seek an outside coach. I was fortunate my first 3 years, because of the program that I was in at ASU, I was fortunate to have a principal coach with me the first 3 years of my principalship. That was the most valuable thing anyone could have ever given me. And so I know the value and the impact of having a coach as a principal. And so I would encourage any principal, whether you're your first year, second year, 15th year, find that person that can be your thought partner, because sometimes you just need to process things before you bring and share it out to your team, right? And to your staff. But having that outside person to help validate what you're thinking and what you're feeling, it needs to be somebody who's been in the trenches, right? They know what you're feeling. They know what you're going through. So if I can encourage any school leader anywhere, it would be to get you a coach, again, whether it's in your district or outside of your district. You need that person to help you navigate the role, because there is a lot that happens in that seat, right? And some of us make it look easy. Some of us make it look really easy, but you don't. It's like a duck. You know, you don't see the duck paddling underneath the water, but they're just kind of smoothing along, going along on top of the water like they don't have a care in the world. But underneath, you know, you're scrambling, you're trying to do it. And from someone who has been in that seat and was in it for 10 years, like, I know, I understand. Yes, you do everything with a smile, but what about those days when it's just really, really hard? Like, find somebody that you can connect with that understands the role and the journey to relieve some of that stress that you're carrying, because you are carrying a lot as a school leader. And to me, those are the most important roles, because you're connected to the students, you're connected to the teachers, and you're connected to the families. And you're having to navigate that circle, right? And it can be a lot, but it's also very rewarding.
It is. Yeah, it is. Being in education, period, can be so very rewarding. I love the fact that I had a chance to have a conversation with you, Lisa, because I think as a teacher, we don't often enough appreciate just the girth of what the admin goes through. And I know one thing I didn't touch on enough is student behavior, but that's definitely another conversation. And I'm going to have you back, because I want to continue this. We'll do this again, because I think that from a teacher perspective, student behavior is probably one of the toughest things that teachers experience, and always want the support of admin.
Yes.
And so I know that's something that you know a little bit about.
Yeah.
And we want to, I'm afraid to open that up right now, but
right. We'll save that for another time.
Definitely. But it's definitely one of those things. So again, there's a lot on your plate as a school leader. There's a lot on your plate, being administrative and being responsible for the whole campus. Like you said, you got the keys, everything, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing what you have. Talk to us really quickly about iLead, and if someone is interested that's listening, that either wants to know more or wants to suggest it to their district or their leadership, what should they do?
So they can contact me through my website, iLeadEducationServices.com. There is all of my information there, or you can follow me on social media on Facebook, Instagram, iLead Education Services. On LinkedIn, I do have a business page, but more so active on my personal page, Lisa Norwood Williams on LinkedIn. But iLead Education Services, Google it, follow us on social media. You can definitely reach out and see. I offer weekly leadership sessions, so you can find out about that on my website. And on my social media, and I do webinars on classroom management. Even though we didn't talk about that, just follow me on all social media platforms and go to my website, and you can see all the great things that we're doing over here.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's definitely reason for you to come back. I'm interested to dive into that other aspect of it for sure. Now, do you think that teachers aspiring to be leaders, is there a space there for them as well?
Absolutely. Okay. Because we in the leadership lounge, we talk about all things. We have folks in there that are current leaders, folks that are aspiring to be leaders, or assistant principals. And the conversation is literally just about leadership. So we welcome anyone that has any interest in school leadership whatsoever. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much again. Hang out so we can talk backstage. Okay. But for our listeners, please look up Lisa Norwood Williams. Look her up in LinkedIn. She's busy in LinkedIn, and she has some great contributions. That's where I see you. Great contributions to articles, and very, very supportive in education. Also, look at her website, see what's available. I also encourage you to, wherever possible, you're looking at this live streamed, to like, to share. I apologize to my LinkedIn folks who probably was on for a few moments and it went away. But I will make sure that I do go back and post it in LinkedIn. But just if you're there and you're able to subscribe, like, share, please do that. We love the support. We want to grow this, and I'm excited for the next episode we have together, Lisa. Thank you again.
Thank
All right,
you,
everyone. Okay, just.